So like in the 1800s, John Pemberton was trying to make patent medicines. Basically, they were fake medicines, and most of them were just like herbal, who's-y what's, who even cares. He was just trying to make anything that would sell.
My office was in the Cocaine Cola building.
Right before Pemberton died, he sold the company for $2,300 to an ambitious workaholic named Asa Candler. Candler then began buying out any outstanding shares owned by other people, so he could have the company fully under his control. Later investigations would find that Candler may not have really bought all those shares, as some of the documents contained forged signatures. We may never know exactly what happened because Candler then had the early records of the company burned, most likely to cover his tracks. Once the Second World War broke out, it was announced sugar would be rationed. However, Coca-Cola made the absurd claim that they should be exempt from the sugar rationing because Coke was an essential wartime product. And even more absurdly, the government agreed. This was largely because Coca-Cola spent huge amounts of money on lobbying the government. Coke funded countless studies to try and convince the government of Coke's benefits, and they claimed that Coke would keep up morale and provide an energy boost for soldiers. Eventually, the US government agreed to appoint a Coca-Cola executive onto the rationing board, who then gave Coca-Cola an exemption from sugar rationing, whilst every other company had to reduce the quantities of sugar they used during the war.
Coca is from a plant. The South Americans would chew it and be like, we had so much energy and we weren't even hungry and we hiked the whole Andes. But really, they were just on cocaine.
But that being said, distribution of the coca leaf is illegal almost worldwide, and Coca-Cola is the only company in the US allowed to legally take in shipments of the coca leaf from Peruvian farmers.
Forbes magazine called it the blunder of the century. A little overblown, don't you think? What about New Coke?
Possibly the darkest day in the history of the Coca-Cola Company occurred on December 5th, 1986, if only because this day included an actual loss of human life. On that day, members of a right-wing paramilitary unit showed up at a Coca-Cola bottling plant in Carepa, Colombia, and when the plant's union executive approached the men to ask them why they were there, they opened fire on him, taking his life immediately.
Why?
They then proceeded to ambush the union's headquarters, destroying equipment and burning records as they went. The very next day, these men confronted the factory's union workers and gave them a choice. They could either quit their jobs or they could receive the same kind of treatment as the union executive.
Though there is no concrete proof that anyone at Coca-Cola's headquarters ordered any of the killings, detractors point out that the company did very little to look into the killings. They made no complaints to the government of Colombia either about the paramilitary's murder of their employees, or their 2 months squatting in the building.
Maybe it was doing this that caused the previous caretakers to go insane and murder their families.
Perhaps. Tell you what, we come back and everyone's slaughtered, I owe you a Coke.
Of course, Coca-Cola has always had to acquire vast quantities of natural resources in order to succeed. In fact, it's the largest sugar buyer in the world. However, as the 90s arrived, Coke began to face yet more negative publicity. For example, in Mexico City, one shopkeeper said she was told her deliveries of Coke would stop unless she removed an alternative cola from her store. Meanwhile, in Brazil, Coke trialed a new type of vending machine that would increase the price of Coke depending on how hot it was outside. Also, to further boost sales figures and trick investors, Coke engaged in channel stuffing, forcing distributors to buy more syrup than they needed at the end of quarters to make Coke's profits look better than they really were. However, the backlash against Coke reached its peak when in 2003, a campaign was launched called Stop Killer Coke that claimed the Coca-Cola Company was responsible for the murder of union members who worked in Coke bottling plants in Colombia. Now, Coke deny this and the exact truth remains unclear, but what we do know is that since 1989, countless unionized workers employed at the Coca-Cola bottling plants in Colombia have been killed and many more have received death threats. In fact, in 2001, the International Labour Rights Fund filed a lawsuit against Coca-Cola bottlers, claiming they'd openly engaged death squads to intimidate, torture, kidnap, and even murder union officials in Latin America. A few years later, another lawsuit was brought about by Guatemalan workers, alleging that they and their families at the Coca bottling plant had been victims of violence after the workers decided to join unions.
What an age we live in.
Oh, look at all that sweet and love.
Because one thing is for sure, you don't build an empire selling sugar water by telling people the truth. Meanwhile, in Brazil, Coke trialed a new type of vending machine that would increase the price of Coke depending on how hot it was outside.
We got an undercover guy who's infiltrating the mob. Oh, there he is now. Hey, Pete! Pete! They fixed the Coke machine!
Here's what he did, though. After 9/11, he went around all over the place saying, within 50 years, 100% chance there's going to be a nuclear attack on U.S. soil. And so suddenly now every stadium is panicked, and they're like, Warren, we believe you because you're our grandfather, Warren.
Do you have any insurance I can buy on that?
Yeah, and he would sell it.
Oh my God, this guy's a scumbag.
I think you would do well with Crazy Guy.
Coke and Pepsi are the same thing! Wake up, people!
People think Warren Buffett's this nice dude,
His
motherfucker.
business model
This
is
guy,
addiction.
bro, his business model is addiction. Look, he owns Coca-Cola, dude. You think this motherfucker's out here?
Bro, he eats McDonald's every day.
Oh, he eats McDonald's every single day and eats Dairy Queen every single day. Dude, he owns the companies. No wonder he's repping his products. Yeah, well, I'm gonna eat McDonald's because Warren Buffett eats McDonald's. Bitch, you ain't Warren Buffett. You don't own Coca-Cola. You don't have to be out here advertising McDonald's, whose #1 refreshment partnership is Coca-Cola. God dang, bro, use your head.
You son of a bitch, Warren! Hold on, I'm never drinking Coke again. Pepsi all day. This guy, let me just get this straight here. He borrows money from a bank on
The shares he owns.
the shares of
his
fraction
company.
of the shares he owns. And the bank obviously gives him money. This is Berkshire Hathaway. This is
Yeah,
not
he's
gonna
got a
go
credit
down.
card that
He
goes
can
against.
pay this back.
Yeah,
Boom.
He's got like some special like diamond, card or whatever that takes as much cash as it wants out of his shares. He's got $70 or $80 billion worth of stock.
And then how does he pay that money back?
Never. It doesn't matter. No one ever asks him for the money back. You think you're gonna call Warren Buffett and say, Warren, we think you're overdue on that $1 billion line. No one asks him for his money back.
Wait, what do you mean no one asks for their money back?
They're happy to do business with him. Whatever bank he borrows. He borrows.
He's the
he borrows from
fucking
Goldman
mafia,
Sachs.
bro.
Senators to present a proposal. I am Peter Flaherty, chairman of the National Legal and Policy Center. If we had an independent chair, the company would be less identified with Mr. Buffett's political activities. He's donated tens of billions to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. As Bill Gates explained when the company was still together, although the company bears our names, basically half our resources have come from Warren Buffett. If woke culture is the disease, then philanthropy is the virus. The Gates Foundation bankrolls the teaching of critical race theory around the country, including that math is inherently racist. The Gates Foundation offers a gender identity toolbox, which asserts that gender is a result of socially and culturally constructed ideas. This is a lie. Gender is not a cultural construct. It is a genetic and biological fact.
So he borrows from Goldman Sachs.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, I don't know whether he pays it back or not.
Yeah.
But if I were him, I certainly wouldn't pay it back because you don't have to.
What do you mean?
He has $80 billion worth of stock. Let's call it that. It might be $100 billion. If he borrows like $10 million, he wants to buy something. They're never gonna. It's backed by $100 billion worth of assets. They're not going to charge him interest. They're just like, Warren, when we do a deal and we think it's interesting to you, can we call you? Can we have your phone number to call you? And he says, yes. Okay, we'll never ask for the money back.
You're telling me right now Warren Buffett doesn't pay for money that he gets and doesn't have to pay back loans that he gets.
Well, I'm not saying he does that. I'm saying he doesn't have to.
And if he, let's say hypothetically speaking, if he wanted to pay that money back, let's say he got a $100,000 loan, based on, certain percentage of the stocks or whatever, and the bank is like, hey, we'd like that $100,000 back. Would he sell certain shares to get cash?
No, or he might just give them the shares.
He could pay them in shares.
Yeah.
And that way, oh my God, that way he doesn't have any revenue.
Yeah,
and therefore he doesn't have to pay taxes.
Yeah, personally, he never has. I don't know if he's made more than like whatever his stated salary is. Maybe it's $1. He doesn't make enough money to pay taxes. He's below the poverty line in terms of income.
So he should be living in one of his trailer homes.
So basically, but he his shares, his $80 billion pay for everything. Because here's the thing. Now we'll get to step 2 on Warren Buffett.
Good.
Is he does all his deals with Goldman Sachs. I'm making this up, but I'm assuming he does this deals with Goldman Sachs.
And just to give a context, everybody listen, Goldman Sachs
they're the biggest bank.
Right. But also operate like a fund too, right?
Yeah.
Investment bank.
So they were in trouble in 2008 when every other bank was in trouble. Them maybe more than most.
Right.
So they called up Warren Buffett and said, Warren, we've done so much business together over the past 40 years. Can you help us out? Can you show the public that Warren Buffett is investing in our stock? So that'll send a message to the public that that we're safe, that Goldman Sachs is safe. Warren Buffett is behind us. That's the value of his name. And he said, no. He said, I need a special deal. And here's the deal. If you go bankrupt, I take all of your assets and I liquidate them until I get my money back first, before any of the millions of shareholders you have, before all the teachers, before all the firemen, before all the police departments, before they get a dime, I get to liquidate all the real estate you own and I get my money back first.
Just to clarify, the teachers, the firemen, et cetera, are involved in
401k plans, that invest
all their
in
retirement, et cetera. So Warren Buffett is like, fuck them.
Right.
I got to get mine before the teachers get their little $40,000 they've accrued over 10 years.
So Goldman Sachs.
We know how much Bill Gates cares about children. He met and traveled with Jeffrey Epstein many times after Epstein's convicted sex crimes. The Gates Foundation had a huge influence over the COVID response fiasco. The Gates Foundation may be the largest single donor to the dark money machine known as Arabella Associates. It funds causes like defunding the police, making American cities unlivable.
I'm certainly not going to leave my husband. You mean I listened to all your touchy-feely yip-yap for nothing? I'm afraid so. At least I had a couple of sips from your Coke when you went to the bathroom.
It turns out, contracts like this had been struck with countless different schools as part of Coke's cradle-to-grave strategy. Basically, the best way to make someone a Coke customer for life is to ensure they drink it from the earliest age possible. One Coke marketing chief pointed out that it's far easier to get them at a young, vulnerable age to become a Coke customer for life than try to convert them later on when they're older. In some of the contracts, the school could even earn additional money by selling more Coca-Cola to its kids. And since many schools were underfunded and in desperate need of money, they would shill Coke's products to their children. This is just one of many ways Coke have managed to circumvent the rules about advertising to children. Another way is that Coke has produced countless collector's items, including Barbie dolls, playing cars, board games, delivery trucks, and other toys that they claim are for adults. Then of course, there's all the Christmas ads, deliberately tying Santa and Coca-Cola together in the minds of impressionable children. In 1982, Coke even bought Columbia Pictures so they could easily integrate product placement into their films. Although they later sold the film studio and decided just to pay other companies for Coke product placement instead. But product placement in family films is a clever loophole that allows them to circumvent rules about targeting children. And it works. Research has shown that even for babies, Coke is one of the most recognized brands in the world.
His big thing is, oh, my secretary pays more taxes than I do. He doesn't pay any taxes because he doesn't make any money. He all his money is in Berkshire Hathaway stock. He's never sold a single share. You only have to pay taxes when you sell. And so, but you can borrow as much as you want off of those shares and you don't pay taxes on money you borrow. And
what does that mean? You can borrow off of
I
shares?
have this asset, just like I have a house.
So I have the bank lend me money off of the asset.
And by the way, at 0% interest, because he's Warren Buffett.
God, this son of a bitch!
And I will point out that Mr. Flaherty is talking about money that I've given, not Berkshire Hathaway. I'm not sure where Mr. Flaherty gives his money, but that's his business. I will say that I am alert to the problem at subsidiaries of people putting pressure on suppliers, on being affected by their own personal politics. So, Reagan and I look at such things as political contributions, which are unfortunately, in a few industries, a part of the way the world works.
Atlanta was a city, landlocked, hundreds of miles from the area we now call the Atlantic Ocean. Yet so desperate the city's desire for tourism that they moved offshore, becoming an island and an even bigger delta hub, until the city overdeveloped and it started to sink. Knowing their fate, the quality people ran away. Ted Turner, Hank Aaron, Jeff Foxworthy, the guy who invented Coca-Cola, the magician, and the other so-called gods of our legends.
Oh.
Will you quit your complaining?
Sir, do you know what this means? He is alive.
Oh, you're right, Smithers. I guess I owe you a Coke.
But what tripped me out is I seen a Diet Coke in the passenger seat. I'm like, damn, Pac was drinking a Diet Coke when this happened.
Did you know that Donald Trump has a button on his desk that calls the butler to bring him a Diet Coke?
They still use coca leaves in modern day Coca-Cola. So do the math on that one. Even if they don't have cocaine in them, they still use the leaves, and they took the cocaine out, putting it somewhere else.